Matt, welcome to the high ground. How you doing?
Thank you. Thank you, Brooks. Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad happy to have you here. I know a little bit about you, but the audience won't. Could you start us off with just kind of a bit of an origin story? What's your lore?
I was going to start in the womb, but that probably feels like too much detail. So, yeah, it was interesting. I had this conversation with a client the other day. They asked me like how I got started in my career, and for me, it started sophomore year of high school. I did not want to do a book report on The Great Gatsby, so I asked my English teacher if I could remake it as a video. Right, this would have been in the late 90s, right, when like digital video was just coming online, and if you could edit things, you were really like ahead of the curve. And so I did. I got some buddies together and we remade The Great Gatsby, and the teacher showed it in class the next week, and she loved it so much she showed it to all of the English classes. So by the end of the day, I was walking down the hall and a cheerleader walked out of English class and said to me, "Whoa, I loved your video." And a career was born. So that was, yeah. And then I studied film in college, and then I moved out to Los Angeles in 2006 to work my way up the studio system. I aspired to create feature films and work in television. And so I did that for the first chapter of my career. And probably 6, 7 years after, working at Sony and ascending the ranks there, working my way up into as a development executive, I felt a little burnt out from making things that I wasn't really passionate about. In any big system, in any bureaucracy, you're inevitably engaging in things that your soul isn't spoken to with. And so I was enduring more of that than I bargained for, and really wanted to get back to being hands-on with the craft of filmmaking. And so I sort of stepped away from the studio system, and I got involved in what was at the time a research project for a friend of mine who was a psychologist. And he wanted to write a book on adults with autism and how they find and manage romantic relationships. And at the time, I had no relationship to autism. Prior to that, I didn't have anybody in my life. I didn't even know much about it. And this was, you know, 2012, 2013. So we didn't know as a culture as much about autism as we do now. And so I just smelled an opportunity to engage in interesting stories that could maybe have some impact on people beyond the entertainment value. So what started as a research project turned into a feature-length independent documentary that I directed and produced, and ultimately premiered the movie at the Tribeca Film Festival and sold it to Netflix and PBS. And we went on to get an Emmy nomination. And I toured the world for a couple of years with that movie, screening it in
Wow.
community centers and big theaters and rural towns. And, what that did for me is reinvigorated this idea that filmmaking, storytelling really is an empathy machine, and is something that can allow us to bring conversations to light that we otherwise are not having in a really emotional and cathartic way. And so I was really proud of that project, and it kind of put me on the map, I think, as someone who can tell stories that matter. And so that's around the time I started the Inside Picture Company, because we can make our art, but we also have to find a way to apply ourselves commercially if we want to pay the bills. And so yeah, so the Inside Picture Company is a little over a decade old, and that's really how we approach all of our work now, is kind of an empathy and story first approach to helping brands connect with customers. And so that's sort of our origin story and where we are today.
That's awesome. I have actually a very similar origin story.
Really?
Yeah, so I remember in high school, a buddy of mine named Howdy, shout out Channel Films. He just purchased it, I guess, the whole company, a couple, I guess, last year.
Wow.
Big shout outs, huge deal for him. But we made a World War I and World War II movie, and like if we had done that now, we'd be on a list for sure. I cannot believe we all still have our fingers and everything. It's crazy. So if with Insight Pictures, you said 10 years now, you guys have been doing this. How have you found a way to navigate this? It's like a never-ending challenge of trying to tie creative into what your customer wants in terms of, they want a service to sell a product, but you want to be creative while making that product. How do you kind of navigate that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when I started the company, we were in that era where a sexy cinematic brand film kind of did the job, right? Like if you had something, if a client of ours had that asset on their website or somewhere front and center on social. That sort of did the lift of like creating an image and building their brand a little bit. And as time has gone on and videos become more ubiquitous and really like front and center of everything, we've had to think a little more strategically about how we design a collection of assets to get the result that they want. And so your question about creativity is, I think that that's always bespoke to who the client is and what they're trying to do, right? And sometimes that creativity is applied in a really rich story environment and the craft of filmmaking. And sometimes it's applied on a more macro level to design a strategy that speaks to who they are as a brand and what they want their customers to have. And maybe is a little less rich in the big, beautiful lighting and camera movements, but uses the platform and the way we can communicate through video in a really effective way. So I think, the way I think about it now is like creativity is, instead of just being applied to a particular asset, it's applied to a strategy, and all of the tendrils that sort of brings up are really a fun place to be able to play, right? You probably know this, Brooks, like just being able to think about how short form video and long form video work together to create like a longer result is a new creative problem to tackle as a storyteller. And so I think it's a fun moment we're in time to be able to apply all those things.
Yeah, I agree. I think in a lot of ways, having those constraints makes us more creative, and it makes our creative more intentional in a lot of ways, which I think most creatives would agree. When you have no bumpers, life gets very stressful very fast, and you'd like stall and just spin your wheels forever. So having the constraints within the objectives of the client it often helps me.
Yeah, I agree. I think constraints are a good word. And like, if you had an unlimited budget and no objective, what would you make? Nothing is the answer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think reining it in and being clear about what we're trying to achieve is the world we're in.
I totally agree. What kind of challenges have you found yourself coming up against? So we're talking about creative and business and stuff, but just generally as a business owner, what have been
Yeah.
some of the bigger challenges you've run into, and how maybe you got past those?
Well, gosh, so many. I mean, I think that the older I get, the more I realize owning a business and being a leader is about problem solving, right? And so I think with time we've seen technology change, and that brings up new solutions, but also new problems. I think the way that being able to deliver maximum value with resources that are shrinking, right? Like just in general, I feel like because clients need so much content, the budgets have shrunk because they need to parse that out as along so many assets. So value engineering, how we create an incredible product at a particular price point, has been, certainly a challenge that I think probably we're all facing to some extent or another. There's the big boogeyman that everybody kind of like talks about, AI. And I've seen that as just a huge help. I don't feel scared by AI at the moment. I feel like, yes, I know that you can use VO3 or what, like there are places that can go create stuff, but I feel like AI is just a tool to help me do things quicker at the moment. And so it's enriched things a lot. I think more globally, I'm a dad, I have young kids, and I think that that's probably one of the challenges I think about that's like front and center for me is like, how do I really go after this career, but also be a super present and effective dad?
Right.
That's like probably the thing I spend the most time thinking about is like whenever you're over here, over this side needs a little bit more. And so that's something I personally think about a lot. And then I think like probably the tip of the spear with this question is like, how do we make our content more effective and emotionally resonant given how much is out there, right? And
Right.
given how much noise is out there, like how do we penetrate? And one of the things I've spent time thinking about to answer that question is like getting really small with the audience, right? Instead of trying to like have this massive reach, being super specific about who I'm talking to or who this content is talking to, and just going really deep on that instead of trying to like have this exposure to this massive general audience. And so, but I think that's a challenge that is going to require more conversation and attention as time goes on and more content and things are
Right.
out there and live in the world.
Yeah, I love that. It's you're bringing up something I know we've probably talked about before, and I'm just never going to stop talking about it. But with AI and everything, to me, AI isn't actually giving us anything new, and like I don't even think that's a hot take anymore. Like stock houses have existed forever. Yeah, if we wanted to just make random video clips to fill up content, the client has had the ability to do that with available software since we existed, for certainly. So this is none of this is new, and I think that what you just kind of touched on about like niching down to almost the individual person level in your communication, and I'll add authenticity is now become the new currency, I think, online, like in my opinion. I think people's ability to sniff out AI generated content or even just like soulless corporate content is becoming highly acute. And the only way to speak to them is to be a genuine person, I feel like, and speak to the things that they care about in a way that they'll hear you and feel seen and heard in return. That's kind of like I'm waxing on a bit too much maybe, but I feel like that's something we've all been saying in this industry forever. Like you got to be authentic and you know, like all this stuff. Like we've been saying that forever, but it's actually genuinely now more important than it ever has been by like an order of magnitude, I'd argue.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think a lot about that in the broader media landscape too, and the sort of decline of long form storytelling and the attraction that most of the general public has to this short form, immediate, authentic, borderline vulnerable content that's out there, and people really gravitating towards the relationship they can have with that content versus the sort of fantasy series Hollywood, for lack of a more poignant term, kind of content. I It's funny. I watch my kids who are 5 and 7, and it's like, well, what are they watching? Because they're not biased by anything. They're just, what
Right.
are they into? And they would much rather watch a kid creator, which is another conversation, but a kid that's 7 years old who plays soccer doing something than a movie, right? And so
Right.
I think that's a clue into like where we're moving. And to circle it back to AI, it's like, maybe I'm naive, but I just don't see how those characteristics are going to be replaced by AI. Maybe we can do it faster or more efficiently, but you're right. It's not going to eliminate the need for the things we create.
Right. I mean, I think just our ability to tap into the human condition is going to become our new language online in a space that's going to be absolutely. I mean, we've said saturated for 15, 20 years now, but it is like on a whole other level, now. But you can spot it. It's still so easy to tell when it's like a real, say an ad, like it's when a real ad made by real people. You can sniff that out so fast. It's crazy.
Absolutely.
It turns out I have a lot in common with your 7-year-old. I have found myself watching YouTube videos on like woodworking and like home improvement way more than I watch movies anymore.
I know, it's so interesting when you go down those like special interest rabbit holes, because it didn't exist for so long, and it really is the mirror to like the things I'm interested in real life. And while sometimes they may lack conflict and dramatic stakes, I'm still really compelled by it and engaged by the home improvement, the DIY shower repair, or the golf
Right.
technique thing. That's what I
Yeah.
spend my time watching.
Yeah. Same. 100%. So, in this, kind of AI talking point, are there any tools you found that have been useful? I know this is kind of boring in comparison to the larger scale conversation, but I think most people who will be watching this are probably like friends and family of mine who all do this stuff and would love a good tool. So, if you've got any recos, I'm here for them.
I don't have anything super sexy to reveal other than really feel like I'm going deep into ChatGPT, right? Like I know there are other platforms that may be more efficient or effective, but I, in the past 2 months, 3 months, have really started to use ChatGPT as almost like a business coach, a creative consultant, and it kind of like a virtual assistant in a lot of ways. And as someone who, my team is all built around freelancers who are remote, right? It can get lonely in the home office, right?
Yeah.
And having some feedback on that level has been hugely instrumental. So I think like finding the way to shape chat GPT to fit into my workflow and answer or solve the problems that I'm having friction points with has been extremely helpful. And that's required really understanding how to use the tool and educating myself on prompt design and how to structure things so that it fits into what I need. So that's really where I find AI being the most helpful. I've experimented with some of the other video generation things and I'm unmoved by them. So how about you? Do you have any AI tools that are really working well for you right now?
I'm kind of in the same boat you are, to be honest. So the platform we're on right now, Riverside, is very helpful in cutting short, you know, clips. It's good at taking the transcript and pulling out what it thinks are good topics. And other than that, though, I find myself using less and less AI. And interestingly enough, like just 5 years ago, if you're interested in something, you'd go down like a rabbit hole, Googling and whatever. I find myself doing that way more with ChatGTP than I ever did with just Google. So if I search something up, so I'm currently learning about, it's called FAR, which is Federal Acquisition Requirement, which is just how the government decides who to buy and what. It's like an attempt at leveling the playing field in the contracting space. One, I never would have known about it if ChatGTP hadn't like kind of clued me in on it. And it was like a weird, not even about what I was talking about thing, but I never would have been able to learn as much as I have now because when it gives you the sources, I dig into the sources to get more context. And I find myself learning more and at a deeper level than I ever did Googling. So at first I was kind of like, this is going to make us all so stupid. So in that regard, is there anything about the future of video that excites you?
That's a good question. I think the immediacy of our ability to capture such premium content remains exciting to me. That's not something that's super new, but I think it's just going to get better and better as we move forward. I've been doing this long enough to remember when we shot film, right? And so I'm still just so amused by the quality of imagery that we can capture on our phones, and kind of the ability to send that out and share that really quickly is really compelling to me. I've just started to dabble into some personal branding stuff myself, like trying to build conversation around things about me beyond video. And so that means Instagram stuff, and the ability to turn that around and create that stuff really quickly is really fun. And I'm having a good time with that. The future of video, I think like on the post-production side of video production, the efficiency, again, with which we can work with editors who are on different continents and create something that's really dynamic and meaningful in a way that's both efficient for the creative process, but for the client is really pretty awesome. And then I think sort of on the distribution end, having a really clear picture of our audience and having metrics about who's engaging with the things we're creating so that we can create more for that person is a really exciting thing. Again, that's not super cutting edge, but I think it's the tools that are becoming more and more available to us as creators, and utilizing them in a way that reaches more people is really exciting to me.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've found my communications with freelancers and contractors now has completely changed too. I don't know what your experience has been like. I'd actually love to know more about that. So if I'm onboarding a contractor, say for editing a video for a client, normally, or at least before, the conversation would be like, are you familiar with Premiere? What kind of turnaround can I expect from you? Like, random production questions. But now it's not so much, do you fit this? Do you check all the boxes? It's what is the outcome? Like, what are you providing? Because I don't care how you get there. There are so many AI tools now that will make your life easier. And I want it to make your life easier because no one likes listening to a 3-hour podcast to cut a 45-minute video. That is not a good use of anyone's time. So I love that it like gives them the opportunity to free up time for themselves and maybe make them more creative when they actually get into the edit. So yeah, bit of a tangent.
No, I agree. I like what you said there. Like all of these tools should be there for us to be more creative and access. Like the tools should get out of the way, and we should be able to get into the craft much easier with all this stuff. And so I think that's in large part what it does, and that's what's exciting about it.
Yeah, totally. And it's maybe a bit too like, rose tinted glasses, but I love the idea of the people I work with having enough time in their personal lives to like go do things that bring them joy. So when they do work on projects, they're coming into it with like a good attitude and they want to be there, like.
That's such an interesting point you're bringing up, actually, because I do feel like maybe that's one of these positive things that's happening as we talk about this. And like, what is it, quarter four of 2025? Like,
Yeah, somehow. Yeah.
how did that happen? That idea of like work-life balance is more present in my mind than ever. And I think that that's what AI promises, right? Is the idea to like eliminate the inefficiencies so that we can bring a level of joy and play to our work that we may not have been able to if we were mired in 8 hours of assistant editing or communication breakdown. You know, it's like I can record a Loom video for my editor who's overseas, upload to Dropbox, ping him a message on Slack, and get back to the things that invigorate me to create more passionately instead of spending half a day in the bullshit of, you know, back and forth on the technical stuff. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's an interesting point.
It's made me so much more aware of the time it takes me to do anything too.
Yeah.
Whenever there's something I feel like that is tedious and I shouldn't have to do it, I find myself getting so angry. I'm in this dark office, it's sunny outside, and I should not be doing this. There should be a tool to do this for me.
Agree.
Oh, tools. Okay. And time, things taking time. Rotoscoping. I feel like this is not a conversation people are having. There's an AI plugin right now where you can tell the AI that's local on your system, I want you to rotoscope out birds. And it just does it. Like, my God, the weeks of life I could have returned to me if I didn't have to rotoscope 10 years ago.
Yeah. And then the iterations of they didn't do, if you're using a vendor for that, they didn't do it right or it wasn't great. And yeah, I agree. The efficiencies of that are unbelievable.
So you've got enough time in industry to maybe help give us a bit of insight on what the future looks like. So you've seen how video production has evolved over the last 20-ish years. Where do you see it going?
It's a great question. And I don't know that I really have a great answer for that, other than I think that it gets more intimate and more vulnerable and kind of reveals more of humanity in it, or at least that's my hope, right? Because I'll look at Instagram as an example of something that was really a place to curate an image you wanted to project. And the tide I see changing is maybe we're over that and we're moving into a place where we want to see the authentic person. We want to connect with someone authentically through these platforms and through video. And I'm hoping that that's what the future ushers in, right? It moves away from the need to project an image and allows us to see more of humanity in an authentic way. And I think the tools we've been talking about, but also just sort of we're in a cultural moment where I think we need more of that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. It's less about a polished image and it's more about access to another person. And I think the more of that we can offer, I think the better off we're all going to be. So that's my hope for the sort of the future of video production and content. I think there will continue to be a place for people to do that on their own. But I also think that creators like us have a really unique opportunity to help with that process in a way that makes it efficient and enjoyable for, you know, businesses and individuals who are looking to communicate with the world.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is maybe kind of a silly comparison, but it just struck me with what you said. This already kind of happened in like the early 2010s-ish era when DSLRs became more ubiquitous and like consumer friendly, and people were shooting videos all the time. So like and Vimeo became a thing, and we went from very, you know, either documentary style videos if we want to be like tickled emotionally, or movies or broadcasts, and it opened it up to everyone, and it became, you'd see these like emotive pieces more and more and more, to where it became kind of the zeitgeist in TV and broadcast for a while. And then we kind of went back, the pendulum swung. This almost feels like that swinging of the pendulum again. Like we're going to start going back to that authentic, make you feel something type video. I love that. That was a great era.
And I think, if you look at it in the broader context of stuff too, it's like COVID was 5 years ago, but I still feel like the pendulum, we're moving away from that, and everything that's happening sort of globally, I think is inviting people to be more of what we just talked about. So the time is ripe.
How do you implement, say, value engineering, the balance of, creativity and meeting client expectations / requirements?
So I think the first step in that process is always understanding what our constraints are or parameters, right? And so the sooner we can be clear about those things, the sooner we can go to work on how to make something amazing in the lines that have been drawn in the sand. I think that value engineering, yeah, comes from understanding parameters, having a really clear objective, and then understanding the tools that are at our disposal now to manufacture something that feels really premium inside of a set of resources. So I was on a shoot last week and was kind of looking around set, and it was, a pretty decent sized budget project, 2 day shoot for a client. We shot here in Los Angeles, and I had a DP, a swing, hair and makeup, and me, 4 people on set. And I looked around and I was like, there's just no way that we would achieve this aesthetic and this level of impact 5 years ago, even 10 years ago, especially 10 years ago, because the tools have gotten so light and so easy to use. And things like autofocus on our Sony cameras have eliminated the need for 3 more people on set, and the lights we use are so efficient and sensitive. And so I think knowing the tools that are at our disposal, picking the right teammates to help create that, right? I think that's another thing I'd be curious to hear your take on, is the sort of, I don't want to call it attitude, but the vibe of the people you collaborate with wanting to be in that same mindset of value engineering. And I want to make something amazing. And I know that this is the box we're working in. So I'm going to make something amazing in that box, instead of the attitude you can see often, which is like, why are we in a box?
Right.
Why do we, right? And it's like, well, because everyone has a box. We all do. And we need to work within that and harvest the tools and the attitude and the synergy and the creative juices to make something amazing within that space. And so, yeah, I think value engineering is about harvesting all of that stuff, picking the right teammates to collaborate with, utilizing the tools to leverage things, and then having the craft, right? That's the other part of it. Is experience gives you the ability to be efficient on set and know how to approach a shoot so that you're going to get everything you need quickly and efficiently. So I feel like those are probably the ingredients, but I'm curious about your answer to that. What do you think?
I mean, I don't have a good answer. That's why I asked you. I'm looking for the answer. It's been a never-ending challenge for me to let go of the reins creatively. I feel like, and it's only in this aspect of my life, I swear. But when it comes to creative, I get hyper controlling, and I will sacrifice all the sleep I can or need to get something the way I want it to be. Before I put it out into the world. And it's been one of the biggest professional challenges that I've had to overcome, is letting go of that control and being okay with something I would not consider perfect, but it's perfect for the client and it's effective for the client. As a business owner, that has been incredibly challenging. Luckily, the team of contractors, freelancers I have, they're very on board with that kind of thing. You said, there are some people who kind of like, why do we have to work within a box? And immediately my mind was like, tell me you're new without telling me you're new. Like that's like such a new person thing to say. Like, because as soon as I give you that open box, you're going to panic.
Well, it's interesting too, because as you're sharing that, I'm thinking about like, what is perfect? What is perfect, and what's the objective here? I was thinking about, so back to my kids for a second. I'm coaching my 7-year-old soccer team, right? And I've never coached before. I'm not a big soccer guy, but my kid's into it. So I'm out there hosting practices and coaching these games. And we're 2 games into an 8-game season, and we're in last place. We've like lost every game, And I was reflecting on this week's game, and I was like, even though we lost, we really won, because the worst kid on the team scored a goal. Everyone had a great time. The parents are so excited their kids are out there and engaged.
Yeah.
I'm like, the people that matter in this experience are going to walk away with something that feels valuable to them and feels like a win. So are we undefeated and like trouncing every team, which was my vision of a perfect season? Absolutely not. But these kids' lives are being enriched because of this experience. And that required me to let go of perfect and allow the greater group to contribute to something that's even more meaningful. So I think the same thing can be true for art and the work we do for clients. It's like, there's a team involved in this, and there's a higher objective than my portfolio per se. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that example. That's much better than anything I could have come up with. So I'm struggling because I want to keep talking about teams, but we don't have a ton of time. And I'm really curious how you'd answer this question. because I have a difficult time with this sometimes too. And that's with when you're working with a client who doesn't necessarily know what they want, how do you go about answering the what they want question? How do you get them over that hump? Because I've run into that way more often than I ever thought I would.
Yeah. Well, I really like those conversations because they feel a little bit like we're going to discover this together, right? So tell me if this resonates, Brooks. Like you get a client who calls you because they know they need video. They're either scared to death to be on camera, have no idea where to start with it all, and just don't know how much money they can spend on this kind of project or these assets. But they booked a discovery call with you, you know? And I think those are a lot of fun because if you go into them knowing like maybe the answer is you don't need any video at all. Maybe that's let's get there. But let's try to understand what you're doing in this world. And then I, as an expert in this, can share some of the ways I think that video can help you achieve those things. Right. And let's workshop those. Do those resonate? Awesome. Yes. If they do, then here's how you might go about bringing that to life. And here's what you can expect as a result when you put in those efforts, right? And so I think that the more you can go into those conversations with potential clients or collaborators, really acting as like a Sherpa instead of like a salesman, I really find those to be fun because then you can help people understand what this whole thing can be about and how they can do it. And even if it's not with you or I making that stuff for them, at least they'll walk away from that conversation with a really clear sense of this can be exciting. It doesn't have to be scary, and it could really do wonders for my mission in the world, my business's objectives, et cetera. And so I think just acting as a guide and helping people understand what things are possible and really trying to deeply understand what they want and marrying those two together helps them understand what they need and want and how you can make it possible.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like my mindset has been shifting in that way over the last 2 years, where I've gone from like I consider myself like a facilitator and educator when I'm talking to say a prospective client or anyone who's just curious. And what Contest High Ground does, I don't even say video production anymore. It's not even in a bullet point. It's just strategic communication. We're here to meet your goals, your marketing communication goals. Because I found, just like you're saying, like often it's not even video they need, and what they think they need as an outcome may not even be what they need. What they're looking for might be to educate a client when they're trying to sell a product. That type of thing happens a lot, and I felt like it became more of a barrier to conversation to sort of pigeonhole myself into a category like that has a kind of a loaded expectation going into it.
Now, if you got into that conversation and you realized that a client, their first order of business should not necessarily be video production, what would your order of operations be? Do you have someone you sort of guide them to, or tell me about that?
Yeah, almost always it would be directing them to someone who's more qualified. So if it's like just marketing needs, say, I don't know, static LinkedIn ads, I've got a friend who owns a studio in Madison, and I would just send them their way,
Awesome.
This is another thing. I keep going back to AI, but man, it just is everywhere. I have found that intercommunication with friends and acquaintances who are maybe not video producers, but maybe designers, marketers, whatever, has become way more frequent than it used to be. I think there's like this desire to, marketing's becoming more like I hate to say it, but like kind of like a good old boys club in a lot of ways, because you can't trust much of what you get online anymore because there's so much content. And you don't know what's real. So I found that like these kind of relationships have led to more clients than anything else by far, by a huge, many orders of magnitude, frankly.
Well, you said the important word in there, trust, right? Like that's when you know, like, and trust somebody, then that's when you can do business, but you enjoy doing business with people, right? And so in that context, right, if you met a new client and you weren't the right fit to help their immediate needs, but you farmed them over to someone who you know is amazing and can help them, that's just as satisfying most of the time.
Well, and that trust thing is such a rare and valuable resource too, and you can't take any risks with that. If there's something you don't do, like I'm talking to anyone starting a business out there, like you can't promise it and not deliver it. As soon as you do that, it's a wrap for you, especially if you're in a really tight knit community, like your niche is tight knit, you're done. Like there's nothing you can do. You can't really repair that.
Yeah, I thought about it recently too. Like, how do you establish trust quickly with someone? And I feel like the cornerstone of that is just candor and honesty, right?
100%.
Like, if I met you and you were blunt about like what you can and can't do, or if you mess something up and you're really quick to address it, I'll still trust you. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Instead of feeling like you're camouflaging something and I'm having to try to sniff out where the errors are. I think that's probably the quickest route to engaging trust.
That's another lesson learned over the last few years is directness and candor is much more effective than pandering. At least for me, when I started, I was like, I have to be nice to everyone, like never say no. And now I say no all the time, you know, because yeah, it's just better that way. More trust.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
So, what kind of industries are you working in now? Who does Insight Picture serve more often than not?
The two sort of verticals I would say that we have found a lot of success in, and by success, I mean clients we love working with and clients that we can really help, are healthcare and home building. They
Mm,
sound sort of disparate and, but the heart of them is really very similar, I found. So healthcare, the way that takes shape is, healthcare systems, right? Big hospitals, networks of hospitals, medical device companies, physician networks, clinics, that sort of thing. And really what we're doing there is helping them connect with the people that they can help, right? And that's almost always story based and in kind of an ongoing engagement to help them stay connected to the people that they're helping. And that's a blast. And you can imagine the kind of, emotional real estate we're able to play with in that ground, right? It's like physicians are helping people stay alive. And so that telling those stories is really fun and gratifying and meaningful in a lot of ways. And then home building. So I got connected to the home building industry because my wife works in it, right? So these are the companies that go in and build like master plan communities, right? So you go in and buy these homes almost like a retail kind of environment. You want floor plan one, two, or three.
mhm.
And what's so interesting about that industry is that we're talking about the most important place on earth, right? It's home. It's people. It's where people live. And so, again, there's really a very fertile emotional ground we can play with when we're trying to help them create video that carries out their business objectives. And so, those are the two big spaces we play. Now, that said, we help clients outside of those a lot as well, but those are really the two places that I've found were most effective and potent.
When you describe that, so I think I'm not sure if we were in the same group call, but I said this recently, and feel free to steal it because I'm definitely stealing value engineering. Um, I said, like lately, I have been really leaning into being just like radically human and like letting myself have the human experience and being open and honest about that. And like the effect it's had on my interpersonal relationships and my professional ones has been pretty profound. And it sounds to me like what you're doing is creating content for the human experience in a lot of ways. It's like it's commercial, but like home, healthcare, and your name are like the three most important things in our life. Like families also wraps those things all together, but I love that.
Yeah, I think that's the human experience is underneath it all, right? It's helping us feel more connected to ourselves and our world, right? That to me is what this craft is all about. And so the more directly we can apply that, the more effective the work is.
Where do you see Insight Pictures going in, say, the next 10 years? What's the blue sky for you?
Great question. I don't know that I want to do more work or be quote bigger, right? I think that's a lot of people's reflex is like to have this many employees and hit this much revenue. I'm really happy with the size we're at and the kind of clients we're working with. I want to be able to dig a little deeper and create some work that feels even more human, maybe a little more vulnerable. And I think that I want to be able to position Insight not only as a sort of strategic partner and a manufacturer of video content, but also as an advisory, right? As an entity that can help educate and guide people, individuals, and organizations to flourish in both their lives and their professional pursuits. So I would say is like where I imagine us being able to spread our wings a little bit and grow and to just continue to do the kind of work we're doing at a bigger and higher level.
I thought you were going to say you're going to start producing your 7-year-old's soccer tutorials.
Clear line in the sand there. Coach area cameras.
Awesome.
All right, man. Well, good to see you. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you soon.
Yeah, sounds good. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man.